Good morning. So happy to keep it rolling along here. Great to be with you on day 2. Already had a great session this morning, and so thanks for coming back today. Got a great panel, All-American Interweaving Place and Design. So looking forward to hearing from this group. I did want to thank our 2 leading sponsors for the event, Woodmeister and William Ravis Real Estate. Thank you to them for their continued support. I'd also like to thank our panel sponsors for this event, Asha, Hudson Valley Lighting Group, Nantucket House Antiques and Interior Design Studio. And I just wanted to also give a shout out to Veranda Magazine. We've had a partnership with them for quite a while, and great to have them back and being part of this again today. And it's my pleasure to welcome Ellen McGauley from Veranda.
Thank you.
To lead the panel discussion and take over from here. So Ellen, it's all yours. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. And welcome everyone. It's so nice to see you all. I want to thank everyone at Nantucket by Design, the event chairs, and Stacy, Ashley, the entire team, everyone at the Nantucket Historical Association, and all of the local businesses in the local community that support this every year is just really incredible, the embrace here. So everyone at Veranda, we're just so honored to be a part of this, and thanks so much to all of you for coming in. So this topic, this is our All-American panel, and we're going to be looking at this through the lens of sort of the quintessential American style, and design being the narrators of basically every little pinhole dot on the map, because that's what American style is really embracing sense of place. The foundation of good design is these stories that we tell. And every place has a story, and so we're gonna talk about what American stories do we impart through design. And I would say, with America having so many, you can ask anyone at the Nantucket Historical Association, their preservation of these stories and their contributions to this, and your contributions to this, ensure that story continues. And we're so grateful, so it doesn't get swept up in the tide of homogeneity. So as we all know, that happens very slowly at first, the homogenization, and then it happens very quickly. And it's associations like this that really ensure that we keep our American stories alive. From our perspective at Veranda, anytime we look at a project, and we get hundreds every month, we're looking for these stories, we're looking for these distinctions. And there's, I think on the slideshow, a great example of this that you all will see, and in the issue of Veranda that you all have is this wonderful waterfront project of Meg Braff's that is in this issue. It's right here on the island, and how she used, so this is just an example, how she used the harbor light, maritime art, the horizon line even. These are all some things that gave it such a beautiful sense of place. And so check it out, it's so happy, and we looked at like how original that was. And so check that out in the magazine. But that's also how we chose our panelists today, as great interpreters of the American story and sense of place. So I'm gonna go ahead and start these introductions, starting with Caroline Gidiere, my friend from Birmingham, Alabama, originally from Florence, that's correct, which has this beautiful historic fabric. And we have built something of a community there that we're so proud of, because we see each other all the time just as being part of the same community, whether about design or not. So it's taught me a lot about the power of community. She's the author of Interiors for a Life in Good Taste, which published earlier this year and sold out in its first printing on the first day. And she'll be signing copies afterwards. So if you don't have one, they will be right here, and you can meet her and get a signed copy. Caroline received the Philip Trammell-Schutze Award for Interior Design from the Institute of Classical Architecture and Art. Veranda, we named her as one of our 6 Next Legends several years back, and she's twice been a finalist in ADAC's Designer of the Year. And her work's been featured on the pages of Vogue and online and on Wall Street Journal, Flower, and many more. So I want to extend a warm welcome to Caroline.
So glad to be here. Also, shout out to Asha,
Yeah,
our panel
sponsor.
has sponsored my dress today too. So
Wonderful.
Proud to
Well,
be
it looks
in
wonderful.
Yeah, thank you.
And we're going to be talking a lot about Nantucket today. It's great to welcome Ashley Holden here at the end, who grew up spending summers on Nantucket, and will be able to tell us a good bit about how that influenced her lens. She had a family home here. You're originally from Chicago, and you were raised in a family of designers, now Houston-based. You were designing with the name that we've known for a while, Ann Wolf, for 10 years. And you have partnered up with her, and so your firm is Wolf Holden. And I thought it was so interesting that Ann Wolf also grew up spending summers in Nantucket. Did I read that correctly?
Yeah.
So I'm so excited to talk to you about how that has really influenced your work. And the links to like craft and collecting, which we see so strongly here. And your work has been published in House Beautiful, Southern Home, Paper City, Homeworthy, and Elle Decor. And I just want to welcome you, Ashley. It's so nice to have you on this panel.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Speaking of family, coming from a family of design talent, I want to warmly welcome Elizabeth Pyne, singer, here in the middle of McMillen, Inc., which is the oldest continually operating interior design firm in the United States. To talk about American style, we have it right here. Elizabeth is, of course, the daughter of Ann Pyne and the granddaughter of the late designer Betty Sherrill, both legends. Elizabeth joined McMillen after having worked at Sotheby's, where she was a specialist in the old master paintings department. So we have a lot to talk about with art, and so I can't wait to hear from you on that. So that art thread has only expanded since you've worked as a designer, and how thrilling it is to be able to kind of mix eras and maybe even expand the horizons of your clients. So your work has been published in House and Garden, the New York Times, and many more. So welcome to you, Elizabeth. So let's jump right in. I want to get to know a little bit more about some of your influences. So for that, I want to start with Ashley. It seems appropriate to start there, since you grew up spending summers here, and we're going to talk a lot about the sense of place that we get from Nantucket. How did that kind of form an imprint on your understanding of American design? How did Nantucket itself shape your point of view on craft and collecting and what you do every day?
You know, it's been nice to reflect on that, how much Nantucket has influenced me in my life. We grew up, my father never really wanted to repeat a vacation ever because he didn't get to travel as a child, so he took us all over. And upon our first trip here, my mom and really all of us fell in love with it so much that she begged him and said, "Can we please go back?" And so this was the only place that we returned again. So we started coming here during the summer, and being able to reflect on how much it really has impacted me as both a person and a designer has been really neat to think about it. From going to my very first auction, which you all should, if you can, attend the auction house here
Yeah.
on Island, and learning and seeing these beautiful antiques from these wonderful, beautiful homes, from the captain's homes and Quakers' homes, which is so neat here on this island that they are right next to each other. My sister and I, who's here, who's also a designer with Meredith Ellis, and my mom are here today. We were laughing this morning because one of my favorite memories was walking on Orange Street, which is one of my favorite streets on the island. And if you walk at night, you can actually see into the homes. And we were saying, she goes, I said, "What would you call us?" And she's like, "Well, I guess we were kind of looky-loos."
Yeah.
But you could see, and as children, see the 12-inch crown molding, and you see the beautiful murals that were painted and the craftsmanship and these insane portraits of family members and collections amongst in the windows with the lamps, and just as a kid getting to walk and see these, and at the earlier stages, renting all different homes and then establishing friendships and seeing all of these wonderful treasures. As more years went on, my mom got involved in the Whaling Museum, so she knows a plethora of history and has passed it down to us about the whalers going over and being one of the first global travelers of our time and collecting and bringing back from China to pottery. And so it's been really neat. She actually started taking up basket weaving, so she's passed that down to me of my love of baskets, in, of course, Nantucket baskets, but and my business partner, Ann Wolf, is the biggest collector I know, and she's passed that. Oh gosh, Ann collects everything, and we too love to do that in our projects. So Nantucket, it all really starts here. I didn't really realize that till you had kind of launched that to me. So it's been...
Well, it sounds like a real reverence for the maker, and also over time you amassed how many different houses were you in on the island, you know? And you were able to see so many things, so many different decorative details. So it sounds like that's been really meaningful for you. Elizabeth, I want to turn to you. We're going to go sort of straight south here and talk about your family home in Florida.
Yes, which...
Are we here?
The last slide, and then this is also... So that looks more like McMillen, the blue and white one, but our family house in Florida was built in 1980, the year of my birth.
And this is in
maybe you don't need to say out loud, but it's in Jupiter Island, Florida. And the thing about the house is it's very modern. There are no crown moldings, very simple baseboard, huge, but I think what's McMillen about the house is the proportions. And one thing that, is just, you can't do anything, proportions always have to be right, or the floor plans, furniture plans, decorating doesn't work. And so that's what I think. Maybe that house will come up again, but it's a perfectly symmetrical house. Again, you'll see in the photograph of the foyer, there are basically like there are office blinds all over the house. And I remember walking in New York, when I was 15 or something, and looking in a dentist's office and seeing the office blinds and thought, really? We in Florida, my favorite house on the entire planet, has dentist's office blinds, but they were, it's a house that my grandparents weren't going to spend a lot of time in. The windows are, the doors they're all sliding glass doors. The whole point was that nature came into the house. The office blinds were supposed to be open all of the time, and you were going to be out and about, swimming, playing tennis, playing golf. And so that was just an example of the whole thesis of this talk, is how you have to look at where you are when you're building a house and think about how the environment is going to relate to what you're building, how you're decorating. And again, it doesn't look like what you'd think of McMillen, but what is McMillen about it is totally appropriate for where it was built. How much time was going to be spent in it. When my grandparents built the house, they just wanted to entertain, and they were going to stay there. Like my parents are in their 70s, and they both still go to the office every day. My grandparents were the same. They were never going to spend time there. So the doors in the house are like cheap and hollow, actually. And now as an adult, I'm like, I cannot believe that they thought this was okay. This is not okay. But it's right for that house.
I'm a Florida native myself, and so we have some of those beach houses up in Ponte Vedra, and these aren't the ones that you can't see. These are the ones that you can see that are just, people are living outside, and they are living in, there might be even some kids sleeping on the porch, because that's the only place left to sleep kind of thing, but they are for being at the beach. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's also, again, when the living room comes up, there's a painting above the sofa, which just has a funny story. It was in our sample room forever at McMillen, and I didn't even like it that much, and it was where our samples went. And then it turns out, I don't know how, my mom said we have to clear out the office, and it turns out it's by a really famous person that my grandmother just bought for stock at McMillen. So it's been moved down to Jupiter Island.
I remember when we saw pictures of that house, we were like, that is Florida. Like that, we know where that house is. And that's what so many times we look for. We get all these submissions and we're like, I know what happens in that house. Caroline, your point of view comes from way back in the earliest days of this country, right? Talk about your primary influence and where that came from.
Right. Well, starting when I was about 3 or 4, and this was in the heyday, talk about you shouldn't, this will age me for sure, but the heyday of Colonial Homes magazine, okay? And the whole country was captivated with American antiques. And if you look at Bewitched during that period of time too, the interiors are they switch from
Bewitched?
Yes, from late 60s to Americana. And my mother wanted to get to the root of it, a lover of interiors, and wanted to go to Colonial Williamsburg for the summer. And the same way
She was like an
started-
investigative reporter. I need to go to the source.
That's right.
I need to go.
And so we went to Colonial Williamsburg, and then after our 20th summer, we stopped taking count. And I've been there Thanksgiving, I've been there Christmas, I've been there in the spring. I have seen the story of a patriot at the visitor center a million times. I can say the words just like I can The Breakfast Club movie. But while all the other children were, twirling in teacups at Disney World or riding waves at the beach, I was beating flax into linen at the Little Patriots program in my little white hat that I liked. That was kind of Little House on the Prairie, so I kind of liked my little white bonnet with a little bow on it. But my mother bought us the tickets, and I can't imagine having a 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old and making them go on tour houses every single summer. And it was the same houses, they didn't change. We toured them every single summer and with pride, punched off the tickets. And the question always was, what was your favorite? What house did you like the most? And, no surprise, the grandest and I thought the most beautiful house every single year was the George Wythe house on the Palace Green. And he was an attorney who had educated Thomas Jefferson, and my mother was a history major, and she really loved the history of it and the coalescence of history and design. And the house was a very important house, and something about the symmetry of it just always spoke to me. And so then when it came time to build my own home, we bought a property that had to be torn down because it was in the tax records in 1968 said it had fallen into horrible disrepair. And so when we bought it in the 2000s, nothing had been done to it. So it had to come down. And if you're building a forever house, it's got to be right? So I looked back and, I was so afraid of getting it wrong. And I knew if I did something very classic, that it would always be right. It might not be in style, and it certainly wasn't what anybody was doing in Birmingham at that period of time, but I knew that it would go the long arc and always be appropriate and right. And it also was, to me, very important to go back into this neighborhood with something that might have been it's a very old neighborhood that built up in the 20s, to put something back in it that once the landscaping filled out, you wouldn't be able to notice that it was a new structure. And people are today, 17 years later, surprised to notice, to learn that it's a new structure and it's not original to the neighborhood.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised that you haven't had the police at we had some police at the door stories earlier in the green room, but that you haven't had police at the door to talk about car wrecks outside of your house, because people do slow down to look at her house. It has such a wonderful presence about it.
It's also on a very busy street.
It is.
I think if it was 3 streets over, I would not be sitting here today. Honestly, that is, that's true.
I
too.
do. No, I don't know that part. But what's so interesting is we've just learned a bit about where you all come from, and these are probably a lot of the same conversations you're having with clients in order, because good design is based on context, and how are we going to tell your stories through sense of place? Where have you been? Where are you from? And so sometimes I think about a home as if it's like a human, and it has a soul, which means it has to come from somewhere. And so I kind of want to talk a little bit about houses that don't appear to come from anywhere. But, Elizabeth, when you think of the idea of storytelling through place, so you're working with clients, what are some of the ways that you use decorating as a narrator? And whether you're telling the story of place or where the people have been, that kind of thing, how can decorating act as a narrator in your projects?
Well, I think you really talk to the client and what they want, and what the architect had in mind. The decorator and the architect cannot work separately. You have to work with the architect from the very beginning. And one of the projects I have up here for clients who are now very dear friends, they're both Australian. And they love the beach and they love nature. And so in their house, they had huge windows, again, lots of French doors. And so what she said to me was, we really want the outside to come into this house. But of course, the house is in East Hampton, which is nice for 2.5 months of the year. And they wanted to use the house all year round. And so you have the fall and the winter, and fall, winter, and early spring in Southampton are very bleak. I mean, we spent COVID in Southampton in April 2020, and I told my husband to remind me that I never wanted to go back to Southampton the month of April for the rest of my life. It was freezing. There was not a green anything anywhere. And so you can't have a completely open house like you can in Florida because, again, it's bleak. And so we had to sort of and they had never spent the off season out in East Hampton. So I had to explain to them that they would want to have rooms that felt very cozy and so she begrudgingly listened to me. And I said, this is a room you're going to spend all your time. And it's true. They ended up spending all of their time in this one room that's a little darker.
Yeah.
And
informed
cozier.
by experience there and knowing the seasons and knowing how you're going to have to, whether your ideal version of how you're going to be living in the spring, how the real version is.
Exactly. And then it was also difficult for me because the way I grew up was that we had antiques everywhere, and my mother collects a lot of porcelain, a lot of ceramics, and so my brother and I just weren't allowed to touch anything except for in our rooms. And so when I met this client, I didn't have children, and she had 3 boys, and she wanted a lot of the house to be practical, and it was really hard for me to accept why she would want that, but I did, and it worked out. It worked out well. Nothing has been broken, but so I learned something too. And now that I have children, they're not allowed to touch anything.
I was just going to ask you.
No, I bought this enormous porcelain flower in Paris. My pride and joy. It's the weirdest looking thing. It's 6 feet tall. And I placed it in a corner of my living room where I thought it would be safe, and the porcelain part is much higher than my son. But sure enough, he goes in there and fiddles, and he twisted the pot and broke a little.
Yeah.
But what are you gonna do? I like things. I like beautiful things, and I have children, so.
Yeah.
I can imagine though, when you're having Thanksgiving dinner or 20 years from now and telling his wife the story of him doing that, and he's always been that way and he broke it or whatever, so it becomes a story of you, and your family.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying that. I still need to. I'm still waiting for the other handmade pedal to arrive back from.
You're getting it restored.
Yeah.
Now, Ashley, how do you use decorating as kind of a narrator of either place or people or cultural tradition?
Well, definitely the same. You have to, architecture and design have to go together. I'm thinking of selfishly myself in this moment right now because I just got married and my husband lives in a mid-century modern home and I have so many traditional things and they didn't really go into the house, that many of them.
Yeah.
But and in addition to with our clients, we also want to do the storytelling of them, of knowing what's important in their life. And we try to have the project be a story of them and what's important in their life and have it be a reflection of them, and not just they're walking into this new home that doesn't feel like them. So getting to know them, whether it is a family heirloom or where do you like to travel or what's color speaks to you, and finding out all of these things. It's through a lot of talking, and it's not just let's get to know you, download, and here you go. This is what we're going to propose to you. It's a full relationship throughout the whole project that definitely evolves as we're designing. Anne always likes to say the project is just a better version of our client.
That's very interesting. I love that.
It really is. And so I think not ever repeating. We really try never to repeat anything in any job, which is really, really hard to do. But that's something to just because no two people are really alike, or couple, or home, and so it's the storytelling through that as well.
Yeah, Caroline, do you agree? How do you?
Well, I think of one great example of this in the slideshow. The cover of my book is a sitting room in a house that has a very English sensibility. My clients are from the UK, but you'd be surprised to learn that this is a lake house on Lake Lanier, which seems incongruous, but it's a house that sits on.
That's in Georgia.
Yes, Lake Lanier, Georgia, which has, I'm going to say, just an average lake house situation architecturally. It's a hodgepodge. There's nothing cohesive. There are a lot of neighborhoods, but this particular house sits on 80 acres that go all the way to the lake. And there's a gate and a long drive. And the couple is British. And I can imagine when they found it that they felt like they had stumbled upon a perfect English countryside. Whereas the rest of us think of Lake Lanier as, maybe an A-frame or just, like urban sprawl kind of situation. There's not a typical architecture out there. And certainly if you put this house next to any of those others, it would seem out of place. But when you come along the driveway and you come upon this large Georgian over, with the lake in the distance, it seems it is appropriate to the place the site.
Yeah, you made it work with the land. You made the land
right.
and everything speak to each other.
And with a couple, they are British, and one of the things when we started, she said, the only thing is I want to buy all of my antiques over here. And I was like, is this a joke? Of course. Let's go. Let's go. Okay. Because the British antiques, there's so much, you start looking at things and everything's from the 15th, 16th, 1700s.
Yeah.
And not a reproduction of, which so often we find in the United States. So really great, but also that speaks to who they are. And the room very much speaks to their very large family, where they need to have the whole family in and enough place for everyone to open Christmas gifts. And there are 24 of them on Christmas morning, just those kind of things. So it just tying the house, the architecture to the land. Sometimes I wouldn't have ever done that for sure. I didn't build this Georgian on this property, but it wouldn't seem appropriate if it was so close to anything else, but out in the middle of nowhere. It's kind of
it kind of sits by itself a good bit. And
I think of Lizzie in is it Sense and No, Pride and Prejudice, in the carriage with her aunt and uncle coming around and seeing Pemberley in the distance. It's just kind of like one of those situations. So to then turn it into kind of an English country house seemed very appropriate to me. And by contrast, the room in Kips Bay that I just did with Palm Beach tells a story, or tried to tell the story of Palm Beach.
Yes.
Even though I had no client, the story was Palm Beach in the 60s, in its heydays, 50s and 60s, and then what can we do to string that story along and use the colors of the area and the shells, maybe a little campy, the shell mirror, but all the rest of the details try to give a wink to the place.
Yeah. And you couldn't have queued this up better, because I want to hear, because I think one thing that's a little bit difficult for us all when we're trying to achieve sense of place, and after covering homes for like more than 20 years now, there's that fine line between literal expressions that become cliche, and then you'd walk through it and you're like, no, this belongs here, but they're not necessarily yelling at you. And the reason why that cues up so perfectly is because I thought, Caroline has to talk about, you had this big shell mirror, which would normally be like shells, Palm Beach, and it would have worked so well, but like, how did that work so well? It did, like it was like the talk, but that was one way that you really, and I don't know if it's up here.
It is, it'll come around.
Yeah.
It's hard to miss that shell mirror, but I wanted a shell mirror, and there was a shell artist who just called me up and said, hey, I have a shell mirror and you're doing a room at Kips Bay. Can I make a shell mirror for you? And then I went and worked with him. It was enormous. It took like 8 men to hold it, to hang it. And, the thing is, I think if I were doing a house, in Palm Beach, I would for sure use that mirror, but I would get a different place, a greater pride of place, more space, a bigger room. When you're doing a show house, you can really lean in and everything's a little bit more over the top.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't put it necessarily in a sitting room off the master if it was, like in a real house, but just having the shells, and I made sure to choose ones that were all kind of more quiet in color, because there's a lot of variety, to try to downplay the largeness of it.
Yeah, and I also think you could maybe tell that it was a very well crafted. There was artisanship to it. It wasn't like mass kind of. I think artisanship, it helps with that. I'm curious to hear from you, Elizabeth, about what you think about literal expressions. The anchors or whatever it is.
So I think the next slide, maybe my parents' barn in Southampton. There it is. So that is a literal expression of a 19th century barn in Southampton. I would not want to sleep in that bed. It is very small. The mattress is not new. And it's surrounded by, very delicate aesthetic movement, porcelain and everything else. But my mother in that barn, that was her goal. She doesn't care if anyone wants to sleep in there. In fact, she hopes that no one ever goes in there because she wants to write her book and relax. And when people go into to our barn, they're amazed. But what I liked the idea of literal expression. So McMillen was founded in 1924. And in the very beginning of McMillen's history, period rooms were what decorators did. My father's side of the family had a department store called Sloan's, which was very famous in New York City, and they sold period rooms. They would have the room and someone would come in and buy it, and then everything would be brought to the townhouse, including paneling. And so once for a show house, McMillen, again in the 1920s, did a period Victorian room, and they thought it was a great success because the entire room had sold. And then everything in the room had sold, and then they found out a week later that it was bought by a funeral parlor. And that was the end of McMillen's period rooms. And then, came the 1930s, which I think was actually McMillen's best period. I love American Art Deco. I think it is so good. And our very dear clients, whose East Hampton house is up here, with the 3 boys, bought an apartment at 19 East 72nd Street, which I think is Candela's one of his masterpieces. It is they have these bas-reliefs on the outside of the building of animals, and also in the elevator, wood carved low reliefs, and they have jelly. It's incredible. And so for that project, it is very modern. It's very much in the 21st century, but there are Art Deco hints there too. And that's how we would do a period. That's how we would, again, it's an Art Deco building, so I wanted it to somehow have references to the Art Deco, but nothing is actually Art Deco.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. Ashley, what do you think about literal?
We just actually finished. Anne built a barn at her ranch in Colorado, and so there aren't any antlers up. However, and literal cowboy expressions, but there are Native American baskets, rugs, textiles, and
Maker traditions.
photographs actually up, mixed in with contemporary lighting, and mixed in with mid-century French furniture, mixed in with Swedish furniture. So it's the mix.
Yeah.
It's the mix that makes it not cliche. And so you go in and you feel the history, you feel all, like, it's just magic, and it's so wonderful. So it's just mixing, and I think that's what, in any project, mixing with the place that you're in, and it's how far you want to take it, and the space that you have, but really mixing is the magic.
Well, what about, so you're out west, you're in you might be in Nantucket with maybe a second home, doing a second home for a client. And you're looking for those maker traditions that are there. What advice can you give us? And Ashley, I'm going to start with you again. To get up to speed on a place where we might be unfamiliar. Let's say we know that we want to get have a second home, whether we're a designer or an enthusiast or something. And how would you kind of give yourself a crash course in the lineage of the place? Do you talk to the makers? Do you go to art galleries, of just kind of learning what would be very intrinsic to the place?
I mean, I'm thinking of a job that we had that we didn't know anything about, the town in California, and just, truly shopping and going to and talking to all the local stores. And I think even here we've bought pieces. Francis Farrell, who owns John Rugg Antiques, he's wonderful, and some of his work is actually pieces, antiques, are in the projects that I'm showing. But going to the stores, talking to the shop owners, and finding those local craftsmen. We did a job in Carpinteria, California, and found amazing potter who ended up doing a bunch of lamps for us for that job. Yeah. But that was just us getting out there and shopping. So, and
it's like, get off the internet, get out there and talk to people. And these are the American stories that are happening right now. So like, I kind of look at all three of you as writing this chapter of American design. And so the people that you find, the people that you're bringing out there and saying, this potter, this artist has so much talent, and they're telling some stories of today. Do you both agree? Is that just kind of getting out there and talking to people when you're unfamiliar, I guess?
Yeah, that's what, I live in New York, so it's very easy to do. Just walk out the door. And I love it. Sometimes I have a crisis of faith in my career. It happens to everyone, I think. And then I'll go and visit an artist studio, and I think, oh, that is why I'm doing this.
Yeah.
That's why we all do this. It's, I think, the human connection with our clients. It's so special. And then also with artisans, and to go to studios and see the metal workers. And even for me, I of course like artists. I love artists. I love talking to them. I love building relationships with them. But I also like building relationships with the people who are, making the hand railing. I just think it's all interesting because they all have something to tell you about proportion.
Yeah.
I don't know how wide a hand railing should be. It's not my specialty, but I liked learning. It's only 1.5 inches or 1.75 inches. I would have thought it was much bigger than that.
Yeah.
I mean, you would, but it's not. And I think everyone has something to teach you, and that's why I love my job, because I will be learning forever. And I've been to Paris too with clients, and London, and it's a different way, but they have, the training they learn from their father, their grandfather, and that still exists. And I hope America will get back to that. I'd say I'm fine if my son goes to trade school and not college. I really would be happy if he became a furniture maker. There's a company called Roman Thomas, and they're very slow with drawings, and I thought I was going to kill them. I was like, why is this taking so long? And then I went to their workroom, and I know why it takes so long. The work is unbelievable. And that was a surprise. My New Yorkie, hurry it up. I was so happy, but I wouldn't have, until I went, and it was, an hour into Brooklyn, but it was totally worth it.
Yeah.
I think when you use local artisans, it goes back to how you started this. It's the house has a soul. And you start to imbue it with personal things that are connected to the area. And when you do that, you start layering in little bits that are winks that are maybe not literal, but are subtle nods. And just like using the materials from the area, the stone or the wood, or things that are going to be appropriate for the place, obviously because they're from there, but also help it endure and speak to the place that it comes from. And I think all of us, it's very clear, we love to, when you are creative, there's a part of your brain that lights up when you begin to collaborate and play off each other with someone who's playful and interested and invested in the product. And so when you find a maker from someone who is doing drawings in a handrail or whatever it is, a blanket in Colorado, or a mural here in Nantucket, who has found a lively, participant, your creativity gets to play in theirs, and when you create better, together is better than what either one of you left to your own devices would come up with, I believe.
That's very well said. Very well said, and it goes back to my theory that houses have souls, and you just said a word in there that, not to get too woo-woo, but we all need belonging. That's what makes us. We all are looking for belonging, and that's how we feel comfortable. That's how we connect. And so these are giving our houses that sense of belonging, of where it is, even the whether it's the stone, those native materials, that kind of thing. So the house doesn't have to say loudly where it is, right?
Very subtle for those who know.
Yeah.
Not in your face.
Yeah.
But if you're looking, it's there.
Yeah. Great points. And we talked a little bit about, European antiques or British antiques. We're guilty of it in Veranda. We've even had the British Isles issue one time. They just have such great craftsmanship, all of that. But I think sometimes we aren't as, we don't talk as much about what American design has historically done really well. And I'd love to get your perspectives on those things. And it might be a style of house. It might be a certain kind of antique that America just does really, really well. Caroline, do you want to start?
Okay, a couple of things. First, it made me think, when we had this discussion, I thought of the DeWitt Wallace Museum in Colonial Williamsburg that has such a great collection of American antiques together. And you can really see European influences, but how those became American. And I think there are styles, influenced by Chippendale and Hepplewhite that, but it's a more colonial, more pared down, and not, coincidentally, thinking of Nantucket and the houses here and the antiques, there has to be, with a lower ceiling and not as grand, you have to scale down the antiques, and they're a little bit more humble maybe, and the beginnings of our country were much more humble, so I really love that concept with antiques. But then the other thing that I think that America does that nobody else does, or we do best and everybody looks to us, is we have created coastal in design.
Like as a vernacular.
Yes, because we have so much coastline. I mean, we have so much as far as the developed world, we have so much coast. There are so many houses from top to bottom, from northeast to the tip of Florida, and then all the way back around to Texas, and then on the California coast. And so when I think of a truly American, beyond the antiques of New England and colonial America, I think of coastal.
Yeah, we've created our that. Yeah, Elizabeth, what do you think? What does America do really well?
Well, I think Nantucket is a perfect example. Honestly, I am in heaven here, walking on the streets and seeing the little plaques on the houses. You can see who lived there and who built it, and I love the small scale of the houses here. It's so tasteful. It's so nice. You can walking on the cobbled streets. As I said, I spent my summers in Southampton, and I spend them in Southampton. And I am so upset by the destruction there of small, beautiful 19th century houses that have been, you had, a quarter of an acre that had a really pretty old 19th century house. And now Southampton is so corrupt that they allowed developers to raise them, build 6,500 square foot houses. It's so gross, no soul, and it's really hurt. I feel like Nantucket has such heart, and that everyone here is so invested in the community. I really feel this way. I'm not just saying it because I texted my friend and I said, it's so nice, no one speeds here. I'm so happy. And it's really sad. It's like America on steroids right now, Southampton, and the policemen and the teachers can't afford to live there because these small houses have been torn down, and they commute, and it's such a stark contrast for me to see. So I don't know. It's like the best of America right now is here on Nantucket.
That's gave me chills a bit about these smaller houses,
Yeah, because I love our house in Southampton so much. It's a small Victorian house, and it's on the main thoroughfare, also, which. The proportions are nice, and it's really cozy.
Yeah. Ashley, what do you think? What do we do really well?
Anne really inspired. Well, we go antiquing on this August. There's an annual antique show up in New Hampshire, which I invite you all to come so that it keeps happening.
Okay. What's the name of it?
Is it Brimfield?
No, it's oh gosh, Lauren, what is it called? It's the New Hampshire. Yes, the New Hampshire Dealer Show.
Thank you.
But we start in Maine, and we take the antique trail going down, which is a bunch of American folk art.
Yeah.
So I think, and all different shows, but it goes on for like a week, which is nice to get in the car and see all these dealers. But decorative painting, I think, is a beautiful thing. We do a lot of decorative combing, which is literally taking the comb painting, which is straight from American folk art.
Is that right? Okay.
Yes.
I don't think I knew that.
So that's something from there, and that I think, but a lot of decorative painting and stenciling.
Yeah.
So yeah.
We
there's just a lot of different
once
things like
asked
that.
a bunch of designers, I can't remember, we did asked a bunch of designers, what is one trade or craft that you could not do a project without? And they were like, you're gonna have to rip my decorative painter from my cold dead hands. Like that is this very,
Yes.
do you agree with that?
I couldn't agree more. Just
Yeah.
from small to large, it just finishes and completes and makes it. And we're talking about not repeating things. When you're using a decorative artist, that is where you are. I mean, you are creating something out of whole cloth that is original and unique to that project, and nobody else will have it. And they're so wonderful. And then the sky's the limit. I mean, whatever you can come up with, you can spin out of whole cloth and make it personal, support the community, and make it,
and I would imagine your relationships with those kinds of crafts that you just.
And then covering little things like the smoke detector and the plugs in the kitchen and all the little things to make them all go away, so that all those little technology, snippets throughout the house that can be real eyesores can all be swept away with the.
I don't know how you all think of all these things. I really don't, and I've been doing this for a long time, but I still don't know. Are we really counting down to 6-5? Okay, well, I was way out over my skis because I have like all of this stuff here. But I'm just going to ask really quickly, maybe we can do quick answers for this, is, you all are writing the newest chapter in American decorating right now. What are you seeing right now that really excites you and is reflective of today's chapter in American life? You can shout it, whoever wants to go first if you think of anything.
I'm excited that I feel a little bit of brown furniture coming back.
Nice. Yeah.
I think people, like we said before, love things that are handmade by people that they can meet, that tell a story, that really speak to them. I do feel that we have the last industry that will not be taken over by AI. I really do, because it's about relationships. Like, I just want to say, I've had people hire me who said, I actually didn't like what you did for my friend, but she really loved working with you, so I think it can work. And we make something totally different than, literally, I was like, that's kind of insulting, but okay. And then we did something completely different for her, because it was, Yeah.
That's a good point.
And I would say the pendulum is returning to color.
Yeah. Good one. Yes. There was what was it yesterday? They said color is more powerful than you can even imagine what it is. And I think we're seeing that as well. I agree with you on that as well.
It's interesting because I think in the 80s we got so dense and saturated with all those jewel tones that we really needed to have this palette cleanse.
Yeah.
But it's been a long palette cleanse. It's been a minute. It's time for color.
Yeah. All I'm thinking about is the issue that we just sent to press.
Oh.
How we have,
Tease
it's
it.
almost like we've just heard that, yes.
Okay.
So for the record, we put it on the cover first, so we didn't copy from what you just said.
Too funny. Well, great minds think alike.
Yeah. Okay, well, I should have mentioned this to begin with so you could be thinking of this. We're going to open it up to questions, and if you have questions, I encourage you to wait. We have a microphone that will be coming around to you because we are recording this. Does anyone have any questions about anything we've talked about or anything we haven't talked about for these incredible panelists? We'd love to hear from you. Oh, we have something in the back?
Hi. I have a question for all of you because, you're all pretty young, so I don't know how long you've been in industry. But do you find that your clientele has changed over the years in terms of wanting sort of to dictate the direction of the project? Or did they allow you to, obviously it's a collaboration, but do they trust you in the decisions that you make? Has it become harder or easier?
I'll start. Anne has been doing this for about 30 years and has had relationships with clients that are coming back to do a refresh. And it's interesting to hear how sometimes the relationships have changed over maybe even working with somebody from a longer time ago and saying, now even more trust has been developed, and working with someone maybe 20 years ago where they were much more involved, and now it's just go. And trust is the best when clients are just able to truly just go ahead and go, and having a trusting relationship.
I think that's true when regardless of the client or how they come to you, or whether it was 7 or 8 years ago or today, it takes a minute to develop that relationship with your client, and the selections that you make where they feel seen and heard, and they are like, oh yeah, and not just that, but then I like what I now am seeing from you, and you're listening and you get it, and I like what you're choosing. Over time, they begin to relinquish that, and you can almost hear them exhale, like, oh, okay, you've got this. All right, fine. Now the question becomes, what do you think? What do you think? What do you tell me what to do here? And help me with this over here, and help me with it. Like, you talk to the architect, you talk to the landscape architect. It just begins, if it's going right, it begins to snowball. But it takes a minute of listening and to your client and processing, and then giving them back something that they can understand, that you've got it. You understand what they're looking for.
I think every client is different. I have some clients who put their complete faith in me. We still have a dialogue, but they believe in me, and they listen, and then other people want to tell me what to do. The aforementioned client who told me she didn't like my work but wanted to work with me constantly tells me what to do, and I say, I don't think that's a good idea, and then we do what she wants, and then 2 months later she says, do you want to say I told you so? We're going to redo it the way you wanted to do it. So I think everyone is different, and I do sometimes think, again, going back to our history, it was so easy for my grandmother, it was so easy for Mrs. Brown, the founder of McMillen. But then recently I found out we did a lot of work for Babe Paley, and in New York City, we did her house in Lyford Key, and then a little bit in Jamaica. But then I found out in New York City, because she had excellent taste also. So a lot of the decorators helped her, but she also really drove every project. Then I found out in New York City she had 6 different decorators in the same apartment, and McMillen would do a bedroom, and then Parrish Hadley would do the library, and I just thought, that would have been very difficult. So I don't think it's ever
she's
been
running a show
easy.
house,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I don't think it's ever been easy. We have a really hard job, and a lot of different personalities, and so.
Yeah. Great question. Thank you for that. Did you have a question up here? Yeah, up here, right here in the front row.
Hi, I really enjoyed the talk, and I really relate to what you said about color specifically. Now we're kind of coming off this whiteness all over the place, these white boxes, and people come to you. Do you feel that sometimes you need to push people for more color? Do you feel like people say, I want a white everywhere, and you're like, do you ever want to choose a beige crayon when you were a kid, kind of thing?
A beige crayon.
Right?
Right?
Well, so at which point do you push? At which point do you say, I'll do what you want?
I think it depends on the client. I've got to get a read on my client. If a client can handle, color and how much, how diluted. But perhaps, I think there's a complexity, whether you're stuck just doing that with different textiles to create a complexity in a tonal palette. But I think most palettes can benefit from at least one color, whether or not it's diluted, and choosing one that feels like home to your client, that feels right to them. And some clients are, we're trying to hold them back from, like, you can't put this many strong colors together.
Yeah.
You've got to have a lead or whatever. So it's just really trying to bring out a client's personality and find where they're most comfortable and what feels like home for them.
I probably won't forget that beige crayon comment. I love it. Thank you for that. Any other questions? Did we have one right here?
So just kind of going off of talking about historic homes, like what you were saying, when people are tearing homes down because they want to build kind of what they want to build and it doesn't really fit in with the community. And I'm very much someone who believes that when you buy an old home, it's less of an ownership and more of a stewardship. And I believe that stewardship is continued, that sense of stewardship is carried on by the designer and architects. And so I just kind of want to know your approach to that. I know that a lot of people, they see homes, no matter how old they are, as a place to kind of show off their work and build their portfolio. Oh yeah, those doors and windows have been there for 100 years, but wouldn't Criddle just look great there instead? Or I'm from Houston, Texas, so we're losing all of our historic homes. So anyway, but so do you just kind of want to talk about your role in stewardship? Like, when is it okay to say, I guess going on with what you just said, the person in front of me, when is it okay to say no, or do you ever opt out, or I don't know, just want to hear more about that.
It's a great question, yeah.
I can speak to that a little bit. Also being in Houston, Texas, we are currently working on a John Staub house that the client is and an architect, and it's really interesting because they want to do an addition, and to do an addition to a John Staub house, you have to do a modern structure to it to keep the historical resignation, and which is really sad because the architect has put a beautiful John Staub looking like addition. So they're fighting really, really hard. We've been working with them almost a year now and haven't gotten started because we haven't gotten approval from the city. So they are traveling right now and gonna go to bat with the city. I've hired Stephen Fox, who's a John Staub specialist, yes. And they're gonna go to bat in September, and fingers crossed, because truly they wanna keep all of that. We're very hopeful because, like most people will tear it down, we live in the city of teardowns, which is really
hearing that more and more from different cities. A lot of people are saying they're in the city of teardowns.
Yeah.
I also want to say I started this with a point that I had torn down my own home, but just for clarification, it had a hole in the roof for over 12 years, and it rained into it, so the interior structure was rotted, and so we were forced to tear it down. This caused tremendous schism in my family. I grew up in a
right there.
I grew up in an old home. I went to college at Holland. Our dorms were from the 1700s. My sister works with the Preservation Resource Center in New Orleans, and she's on the board. And it was like, you're tearing down an old home. It was a big moment, but it actually had to come down. There was really no way to salvage it because there were termites in the lathing of the bricks, so it had to come down. But I think it is so important. I think that communities need to enact ordinances to preserve and protect and prohibit tearing down houses, and what we think of it as old needs to be on a rolling basis. So I mean, houses that I wouldn't have thought need to be protected certainly now do. I think it's important to our heritage. It's like the oldest cities in Europe. Venice and Brugge are the ones that lost their money, and so they're the ones that they didn't tear down, and so we have the oldest buildings. But I think we've got to start that here.
I do want to say I am sympathetic to, I think things have to change and they do have to adapt. Our aforementioned house in Southampton doesn't totally work for our family. Like, we do need to add bathrooms. We do need to push out some rooms. And for me, I think what's important is get local electricians, get local plumbers, use the people who live there, who know what is appropriate architecturally. Like, get architects who are really trained, who are not in it to just flip houses, and that, I think. But again, I don't like peeling paint. Like I don't like peeling paint. I like modern things, but I think you have to approach it in a way that's very personal and caring, and not in a, how am I going to add like monetary value to this. It has to be personal and thought through.
Yeah, thank you for that.
I think.
Do we? right over here. Okay, sorry, one more.
Yeah, this is kind of related to what you just answered, but you guys as interior designers, I'm an architect, I work with Wilson Fuqua, who's over there. What do you do if you are with a client who has this old house that, well, but has been it's being renovated, and it has, you know, like the most the greatest and most beautiful dining room done a couple of years back, and you know the aesthetic value of that room, and the client wants to freshen it up. What is your intake? It's like if you are called to remodel the interiors for Versailles, and you get to the mirror room and you say, let's get rid of all the mirrors here. Literal, it was literal like that. What is your intake in that? What would you do?
Yeah, what would you, like in that situation, what would you do?
I mean, I would just say let's save the mirrors and preserve them in case you want to put them back. You know, that's what I would do. But it's funny because I have two role models in my career, and one is my grandmother, who was so amazing. She was not afraid of change. She was constantly changing. She had such an open mind. She was a businesswoman first and foremost. She was a businesswoman, and I would say a decorator second. She really relied on the staff of McMillen to decorate. And then I have my mother, who's a total preservationist. She doesn't like change. She wants everything. She's a true conservative. She wants everything to stay exactly the same, and she's a hoarder, and she saves everything. And I go into our dining room in Southampton, and she's talking about getting a new hand-knotted silk rug from Beauvais, and I said, that's great, Mom, but why don't you first fix the peeling wallpaper? Because this is very upsetting to me to come into your house and see this. And I think as a decorator, you know, you might not want people to know that you're living with, but she just like wants everything to stay as it is, 19th century in the case of that house. And so I have those two conflicting voices in my head all the time. But yeah, I would say I agree, let's freshen it up. Let's do wallpaper, something new. Let's redo the electrical so that it makes sense for the 21st century, but let's save what was here.
That was a great question. Thank you. I think that's all we have time for, and I just want to thank all of you for coming, and I want to thank our panelists for such a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much. Thank you all so much.
Before everyone leaves, we wanted to hand out these gifts to our panelists
No, thank you.
as a way of saying thank you, and wondering if one of you might just open it up and show the group, because I wanted to.
Who wants to do the honors?
You got it?
So pretty.
I wanted to explain that. I think an important thing for us to talk about, just briefly, because it was brought up time and again during the panel, these are handmade here on Nantucket at our 1800 house.
Wow.
Every bit of it. The paper is marbled by hand here on site as part of a class that we teach. The boxes are made, the letters are embossed here at the 1800 House program, where we really celebrate and preserve these various crafts, and increasingly are providing training opportunities for people to learn how to do these crafts. It's something really, really important to us here. So again, it came up several times today in your talk, so I wanted to highlight that. Also, hope that people will find time to stop at the Whaling Museum to see our exhibition, Behind the Seams, a textile show that again deals with some of the same topics you're talking about here today, about making and meaning and place. So we hope that you'll find time to visit at the museum. And lastly, there's a book signing going on right now too, as you leave. So out that door, the books are available.
Thank
So
you.
again, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a nice afternoon.
Thank you.